For the past week, we've been sailing with a U.S. Coast Guard search and rescue specialist, and the stories that he has told us are just incredible. Like the one time they were out searching for a missing sailboat and they came across an ocean rower who had capsized. But what blows my mind the most is the little mistakes that people make that cause them to be stuck out at sea for days when they could have been rescued in hours. And even us, we were given bad information when we started sailing that had us so scared we never wanted to call the Coast Guard. I'll save that story for a little bit later. For now, let me introduce you to Coop. So if you watched our last video, you've already met Coop, so you know who he is. But for those of you that haven't, this is Coop. So what have you been up to for the past, say, 30 years?
Oh, I don't know, about 30 years ago, I was looking for something to do after high school, and I joined the Coast Guard, and it's been a pretty great ride ever since.
And what do you specialize in now?
In search and rescue, both maritime, aeronautical, and even a little bit of land search and rescue. Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't know the land part.
Yeah, it's a whole nother thing.
And you're stationed out of Hawaii?
I work at the Coast Guard's regional headquarters. It covers all the way from halfway to California to all the way over past Guam.
Wow, that's a pretty big stretch of ocean.
It's 14.2 million square miles.
It's
huge.
Oh, dang. Yeah, that's nuts.
Yeah.
Let's start with some myth busting, right? One myth that we were told straight from the beginning was if you have an emergency, don't call the Coast Guard unless you absolutely want to lose your vessel, because they will airlift everybody on board off of the boat and just kiss your vessel goodbye. Is that true?
Yeah, nothing could be further from the truth. As a matter of fact, we want people to call us anytime they're having some kind of trouble or emergency. You don't need to be anywhere close to losing your boat before you'll call us and let us know what's going on. Let us see if we can help you somehow. And then we're definitely not going to come take everybody off the boat and leave a boat adrift in the ocean unless that's an absolute last resort. If we think the boat is going to sink out from underneath you, then we're going to politely invite you to get off the vessel. But no, we do not want vessels just adrift in the ocean causing danger.
So if like Nikki was to break her leg or something and she was losing blood and I called you guys, you could just airlift her out and then I could continue to sail the boat on to the next safe harbor.
Right, exactly. What we can also do is, if you don't already have medical advice from a contracted provider, we have a duty physician who's really good at hearing medical conditions over the phone or even through email and helping give you guidance for what you can do at your level of medical training that might be able to make her more comfortable or stabilize her until we can get medical professionals there to effect the rescue.
Cool. It's almost like Tele-Health, but not.
Right, yeah, but it's like emergency,
like,
something has gone really wrong. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't even know that. I mean,
Yeah.
I've learned so much with being on board with you. I'm going to consult my notes because I don't want to forget anything. All right, another myth. If your vessel isn't flagged in the USA, then the U.S. Coast Guard isn't going to help you.
Oh, yeah, and that's definitely wrong. But what we will do initially is respect our international partnerships in the search and rescue community with the other rescue coordination centers. When a U.S. registered EPIRB goes off, or a PLB, or an ELT for planes, we will call the country where the beacon is going off and ask them, have you received this beacon and can you tell us what you're doing to respond? And sometimes they've received it, sometimes they haven't. So it's a great double safety to make sure that you are getting the rescue services you need. Now, if that country said, we are not going to respond, the U.S. retains the right to be able to work up what assistance we can. It may take a long time to get there because we won't be the closest, but we are definitely going to do what we can to effect the rescue.
I remember you saying that there's really very little politics involved when people need to be rescued, that you could be communicating with countries from all around the world.
Yeah.
It's like even China and Russia.
Everyone believes in search and rescue, right? That the importance of it, of taking care of our people, our fellow mariners, it's a universal thing that we can all agree on. So I work in Honolulu, Hawaii. When a beacon alert comes in, maybe a foreign flag vessel is in distress near U.S. waters. And when we get their alert, we're going to call their home rescue coordination center to say, hey, did you guys receive this alert? And sometimes we can gather better information from them to help assist that vessel who is close. And it doesn't matter what the country is. It doesn't matter if our political ideologies are different. We always come together to help that mariner.
All right, then the next one. Don't call the Coast Guard for a tow.
Oh, okay. If they are in distress, we can come out and tow you. However, if a person is not in distress, and we'll go through a list of questions with that person to help evaluate the situation. If you are adrift, you have no propulsion, and you're really close to a shoal, or if you have a medical emergency on board, any variety of things that could make you feel like, hey, I can no longer safely operate this vessel. We're going to evaluate that, and we may be able to come out and give you assistance. We also might not be the best suited to do the tow. If it takes the same amount of time for us and a commercial towing service to make it there, you may be better off. But either way, we have that list of resources of who can respond to your location to get you the best service that you need. But the one thing I'll say is the Coast Guard doesn't ever want to get in the way of, we don't want to compete with commercial enterprise as long as there's no distress.
Okay. And for the clarification purposes, commercial enterprise for the people in the U.S., that would be like a sea tow or a U.S. boat or something like that.
Yeah.
And then this one's kind of along those same lines. Don't ever call the U.S. Coast Guard if you need fuel.
Yeah. We've had cases where people have called us up and basically given us their fuel order, and we had to tell them that's not the business we're in. The Coast Guard doesn't fill up jerry cans full of gas or diesel or anything and just deliver them to people. What we might be able to do, though, is help connect you with a commercial service that could do that, because that's not what we're in the business of.
Or maybe coordinate the sailor with a tanker that maybe has the capability of transferring fuel. I have heard of that. Yeah.
We'll, Coast Guard has different means to put out either a broadcast over the VHF radio or over the satellite networks to anybody within a reasonable response time to your area to see who can help, who might have the capability to give you fuel, the kind of fuel that you need, and they might have the right hoses to connect and pump it to you safely. Right.
So, well, you're not a 411. You're not an information channel. But at the same time, if you're in a situation, the Coast Guard actually can be really helpful in at least pointing you in the right direction.
Right. So we are the Coast Guard, but we operate a rescue coordination center. And the important word in there is coordination. The Coast Guard doesn't have the resources to do everything for everyone, nor do we even have the authorities. But we can coordinate between commercial folks. We can coordinate between a good Samaritan who might be able to assist. We can put the word out to help connect you with other people to get you what you need.
Cool. The next one is kind of, I thought we should wait to call the Coast Guard until like there was a dire emergency. But when we were in our first real emergency of sailing to New Zealand, we had our life raft locker sucked out from underneath. I instantly thought I should alert somebody because it's a life raft. It has a serial number that's connected to my name. So I emailed the New Zealand Coast Guard and I said, here's our situation. We're 4 days out. Here's our coordinates. Here's our tracking map. We've just lost our life raft. I just want you to have the heads up. So that's kind of what we did. And then what would substantiate somebody just reaching out to the Coast Guard?
You can reach out to the Coast Guard for almost anything. If you have a situation on your vessel that feels like it's out of the ordinary, you're unsure about something, frequently we have mariners who contact us just to establish a communication schedule with us so that they know someone is paying attention to where they're going. Now, we're not monitoring if someone's just on a voyage. There's usually some situation, and maybe it resolves in a couple of days, maybe it resolves in a couple of hours. So we'll check in maybe every 12 hours, maybe every day, maybe every 2 days, whatever that mariner needs in order to feel like they are not alone. You know, that they have resources and that there is somebody there who can help them talk through what's happening.
And that was the peace of mind for us, thinking New Zealand is now watching us and they know where we are. Sure enough, when we arrived in the Bay of Islands, they're like, hey, we're with the Coast Guard, we've been watching you. That feeling was so good to know that we were being just watched.
Everybody needs to know they're not alone.
And then on that note, sometimes the Coast Guard might not be the best organization to call.
Right. So that's The globe is divided up into search and rescue regions based on agreements through the International Maritime Organization. When they divided up the planet, within every one of those regions, there is a rescue coordination center, or an RCC they're called. We're gonna give you guys a resource to look up anywhere you are in the world. Thanks to the Canadians who created the website. You can put in your Latin long, you can just search. It's kind of a GIS program. You can very simply get the contact information for your rescue coordination center anywhere you are, so that you can reach out and talk to them, because it may not be the Coast Guard, it may be that country's Navy, any one of a number of different agencies, but they are the ones who will be there 24/7 to get you connected with the right folks.
We were in Palawan recently, and that's kind of on the edge of like the Spratlys, which is kind of a contested area. So if I was to call just Coast Guard, who knows who?
Right,
knows?
yeah, you may not like the services you receive, you know?
I think the next thing we should talk about is devices.
Yes,
right?
Super important.
I'll show you what I have if you show me what you have.
Yeah, but there's some good stories attached to some of these devices.
Yeah.
Let's see, what do we want to start with? I've got properly registered PLB with a good battery and the antenna story.
Yes, this is a major takeaway that I've spent countless hours with the staff that work with me trying to track down beacons that were not properly registered, because someone purchased it, which is great, they did the right thing. The next step is to get into their country's database. If the US, it's with a NOAA, I'm going to botch the acronym, National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration. Beacon registration, that's the place where when your beacon goes off, that information is going to come up on the screen in the Rescue Coordination Center, and they're going to know more information about you or your vessel, or in my case, I carry this little PLB. It's small, it fits in the pocket of my surfboard shorts. It fits anywhere, and I take it if I'm out on an outrigger canoe or a boat, or I'm out on a stand-up paddleboard and I'm going to be out offshore somewhere. And so if this thing goes off, there's a ton of information in that registration about me and the type of craft that I operate on, and most importantly, a link to somewhere with pictures. So if they're coming out to find me, which I hope that never happens, they're going to have a picture.
Embarrassing.
Right. Yeah. There's actually a sort of lore that if a Coast Guard person has to be rescued by the Coast Guard, you have to get your case number tattooed on you somewhere. Yeah.
Let's see those forearms.
Right, yeah. There are no tattoos on me yet. Yeah, so they will have an image of me and the craft I typically operate on to help those searchers, those eyes that are in the plane or the helicopter or the boat that's coming to help, they know what they're looking for.
Okay, and for us, that looks like we have a cloud file that has all the information of our next of kin. It has people to contact, photos of our boat, our tender, our paddleboards, ourselves, our crew that's on board with us temporarily or long term, and also tracking map. So they can go to our tracking map and see our last plotted information. Anything I forget, we'll put on the website in the blog. So I know this is not a full comprehensive, like everything you need to know, but we will put more details on the blog.
Okay.
So first let's talk about floating. So this one is designed to float. So it floats up, buoyant like this, and this is the antenna. And it says on here, GPS do not obstruct. So don't have your hand on it like that, okay?
That's right. Our EPIRB.
This is our EPIRB.
Yeah.
This is a really important thing, is understanding how to use. You've stopped to read all those little things that are written on there. Those are super important. Those are things that warn you, like Jason showed, don't cover these GPS sensors, because they need to see those satellites in the sky to get an accurate position. If you don't have an accurate position, things can go wrong. Rescuers can be sent to the wrong location. This is a floating PLB, which is great because if I was offshore and I got into some trouble and I went to open it up, I turn it on, right? And I think, oh, okay, well, this thing's going to be floating, right? It is going to float, but as soon as I put this in the water, it's going to turn upside down. And now this really important little logo on the front, or this little warning that says, give it a clear view to the sky. Well, now this signal could be muffled.
Yeah.
That could be bad.
Yeah. I remember you saying if the antenna isn't isn't showing up, then it could expand your search zone by hundreds of miles, right?
Recently, we had a case where a gentleman was out foil surfing in the big waves off the north shore of Oahu, but to his credit, he was prepared. He brought a PLB with him, and the manufacturers told him, yes, this thing is super accurate, you're getting the latest technology, and he went out there ready for the worst case to happen. Well, I guess he got into a big wave. The wave separated his leash from his board, or a leg rope, I think the Aussies call it. And he thought, okay, well, this is the time. It's time to set off my beacon. And so he turned his on, but then he thought, okay, well, it's not like the fire department, you know, where they show up in usually like 5 minutes. We're talking about Coast Guard response. It's going to take a little longer. So he thought, well, I'm going to start swimming for shore. And he took his beacon that needs to have a clear view to the sky, and he stuffed it inside of his ballistic jacket, his impact vest. So now that beacon became muffled. That beacon started giving a wrong position, which was actually on land. His beacon was properly registered. We contacted his emergency contact, who said, nope, I'm 100% sure he is a mile offshore in the big waves surfing. So we sent rescue resources to his actual location and not the false location. It really is super important, because with the way that these work, and I won't go technical on it, but your most accurate positions come when this thing can get a GPS position, it encodes it into the signal that is sent to a different satellite, and then it goes to the Rescue Coordination Center. It needs both of those steps to happen correctly in order to get us there to that spot. Otherwise, the satellites start triangulating and trying to figure out where it is, and that's where the error ring gets much bigger.
Yeah. And then another story you told us was about a guy that didn't know how to properly use his EPIRB, and he just kept hitting the test button over and over and over and over.
It's been around a while to know that if you're going to test your beacon, and almost every beacon has instructions for testing it right on the beacon. Typically there's a button with a T on it, which is for testing, and it'll tell you to test it in the first 5 minutes of the hour. If you just test it the correct way, it will not transmit an emergency signal. So we encourage people to test their EPIRBs and make sure that the battery is still good and that it's going to last for the expected amount of time. However, if you keep mashing that button, which was the case of a mariner, of an ocean rower who got into a situation where he had capsized in the ocean and he went into his life raft. He was unclear about how to use his PLB, and he was just mashing the test button repeatedly. Luckily, absolutely so lucky, that it threw off a single position to the satellite. Don't do that. Don't do that.
He got really lucky.
Learn which is the test button and learn which is the power button, how to properly activate it so that we can send rescue resources to your exact location.
And then on that note, we have life jackets and PLBs. So this is an EPIRB, that's a PLB.
Yes.
This is also a PLB, but this one has PLB plus AIS.
This is an amazing device. This is not a brand endorsement. This is a technology endorsement that you have the personal locator beacon, which is going to communicate with the satellite that we've been talking about and go to a rescue coordination center. It also has the AIS feature in it so that anyone around you will see you, so that if someone else is close by, they could come and assist. Your own vessel, if you were wearing this vest and you fell overboard, you know, while you're out working lines, the other person operating your vessel coming to look and recover you should see you come up on their AIS display if you're equipped for it. So it is an absolute no-brainer that if someone has the means, this should be a priority type of device to have on your life jacket if you're going to be out in the open ocean.
And then talking about this life jacket, this is also not a brand endorsement for this life jacket, but you want to have a proper offshore life jacket with some sort of beacon if you can, a light, a spray hood, And it has to, you said it has to it has to be designed in a certain way to keep your airways open.
It does. We know that hypothermia is one of the greatest threats to you once you go into the water. Drowning is right up there with it. The proper life jacket for that offshore cruising, offshore environment is one that if you go in the water and you become unconscious will keep you face up. It will keep your airway open so that even if you become hypothermic to where you're no longer keeping yourself afloat, you may be alive and rescuers can still come and save you, but you need that life jacket to keep your airway open.
And I guess if your airway's open and you're passed out, that's where that spray hood also comes in handy.
Right. Most accidents happen, right, when the weather is pretty treacherous, right? And you need to keep the splashes of water from getting into your airway.
One more life-saving device, and that is the life raft. So the next step.
Oh, yeah.
And you told us some interesting stories about life rafts not wanting to stay afloat.
So whenever someone gets into a very serious accident and we effect a rescue, we always endeavor to go conduct a thorough interview with them. And that is not to see if they did something wrong. It's not an enforcement thing. It's hey, we want to learn. We want to talk to you about how did your rescue gear work? What did you have with you? And did you have any problems? Because the Coast Guard can communicate with manufacturers to tell them, hey, we're seeing a trend in the maritime community. So it's an important way for that info to get through. And we hear frequently that life rafts are often leaking, or you get the water intrusion, and a lot of times we peel the layers of the onion and we ask, well, when was the last time the life raft was repacked? And it's like, well, I don't really remember. And, I'm always curious when I get on boats. If someone doesn't mind me just looking around, getting familiar with the safety gear, frequently find life rafts which are beyond their repack date. So not only are your emergency supplies that are in life raft potentially out of date, your life raft itself could be deteriorating. All those folds in there, being exposed to the heat all the time, you could very easily get a leak. So hit those repack dates before, sometimes there's delays, so that when you are in that worst case scenario, you can trust your gear.
And then I guess the last thing I want to talk to you about is sometimes you end up having to save sailors from landfills.
Oh yeah, so I thank you for bringing that up, because this is, everybody wants to be able to help others, right? It's super important. But these beacons, they don't last forever, right? They'll have a service life to it, or maybe it just becomes old technology. And so we spend a lot of time tracking down beacons like this that somebody, maybe they sell a boat to someone else, someone leaves it in there. And so they'll think, well, what is this? Maybe they don't even understand what it is, and they throw it in the trash. And that is the worst case scenario for us. So we want to encourage folks to go into, make sure that it's not, if it's registered, we go into the website and we tell them, you can even, if you don't even know how to get into the registration, you can just email them, say, hey, I found this thing, take a picture, send it to them, I'm throwing it away. And then the other thing is, it's so easy to disconnect the battery from this. So other things you might get away with throwing them away. We should all be recycling our e-waste, right? We should be recycling our lithium batteries. But in the unfortunate event that someone just throws this thing in the trash without disconnecting the battery, this little bugger will burp one last signal. Usually when it's sitting in a landfill somewhere, I'm in an island state, right? So the landfills are close to the shoreline, right? This beacon comes in, it looks like it could be in the landfill, it could be somebody who's out in the ocean, right? Those are two distinctly different responses we're gonna muster up. If folks would learn to contact the manufacturer about how to just disconnect the battery, it's super simple. This is a great example. This is a really popular PLB. There are 2 Phillips head screws in there. Everybody's got that screwdriver somewhere. And you pull this back off and it's a little plug. You don't have to clip wires. It's not, do I cut the red or the blue? It's not a bomb. Nothing bad is gonna happen if you just unplug the little battery and take it to your local recycling center for lithium batteries. Please do that. Make my life easier. And the rest of the search and rescue system, we will be forever grateful if folks will feel empowered to disconnect the old battery in their beacon. Thank you.
You're very passionate about that, Coop.
Yes.
How many hours have you spent
Oh
in the
my
landfill?
goodness, you don't even know. Thankfully, I don't go to the landfill. We have some amazing volunteers from the Air Force, of all people, who go out there and they use direction finders and they'll try to find that signal. But like I said, normally it's like it gets one signal. That we call it a one-hit wonder.
Yeah.
It's like it goes off, and of course the registration data is no good. And if we call who had it, they're like, I got rid of that 10 years ago. You know, a lot of time is wasted. That's time taken away from actually helping real distress cases. So we want to avoid that.
And same goes for a life jacket. If you have a life jacket like this with something, just remember that if it has an AIS or a PLB in there, make sure you turn it off, disconnect it. I thought some of the conversations we had were so interesting, and I hope you guys found this interesting as well. And like I said, if we think of anything else, we'll add it to the blog. Thank you very much, Coop, for sailing with us.
Yeah, it's been
Sharing
a
the
pleasure.
stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've learned so much from you guys too. I feel like we had a really good exchange of, we're making each other better, right? That's the goal.
Exactly.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye. Thanks, Coop.
Bye.
Bye. Like and subscribe.